Hey everyone, this is Charlie Shrem, and you're listening to Untold Stories. What an amazing episode I had for you today. Jed McCaleb, a good friend of mine, the founder of Mt Gox, the founder of eDonkey, one of the founders of Ripple, the founder of Stellar, and just a personally good friend and a great guy. We got into some really philosophical discussions, high level, definitely going to blow your mind because my mind got blown. So, you know who I am. I'm Charlie Shrem. Enjoy Untold Stories. Jed McCaleb, it's been so long. Welcome to Untold Stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what I try to like kind of do, and especially when I'm friends with the guest already, is I go back and I look at old emails and I just kind of go back down memory lane, and there were just so many emails that you and I were part of. There was one where like Tony Galippi from BitPay was trying to get us to go to a music festival in Orlando or something. You and Roger, and then I remember like my favorite memory. One of my favorite memories was at that Money Show conference back in like 2012 or 2011, was it?
Uh-huh. And
you were there in your sweatpants, and you were running the booth, and we were right next to PayPal.
That was those were good times. Yeah.
And Roger and Eric was there, and it was just so much fun. And we can go down memory lane and talk about some crazy stories, but really, like you and a few others in the space, you're not content with like what you've done. And I'm talking about people like Charles Hodgkinson or Dan Larimer. It's like you guys just continue wanting to architect these new protocols. What is that drive for you? I mean, just the things that you're involved in the space and Mt. Gox and Ripple and that Stellar. It's like, will there be something else? Are you satisfied with your legacy in this space?
So yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll start another crypto project. In fact, I would be shocked more than new ones if I did.
I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm tired.
Yeah, I think we will definitely continue to iterate on Stellar, and there's lots of improvements that we want to make there, and like lots of things that we're working on. But right now, I think it has the base of what I would want out of a protocol, and we can just grow from there. I think in general. I do always seek to kind of like improve things and make things better. I mean, that's kind of a programming mindset, I think. You just like see problems and you want to like see how you can fix them. And there's sort of a infinite stream of problems, but the cool thing is there's an infinite stream of solutions that you can kind of like keep working to make things better. And that's kind of always been my deal. So.
And making things better, how? Like making the world a better place or making the protocol better?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, by making the protocol better, you're making the world better, hopefully, if it's actually useful for people, right? I mean, our goal has always been to make something that's useful for people. And yeah, I mean, that to me is like making things better is essentially, at the end of the day, you're making people's lives better and improving like the overall quality of life on the planet, right? So that's kind of what you want to achieve. So
take us back. Starting your whole story, starting from like the IRC eDonkey days. Take us back to all that, how you got started in the world of the internet and some of those first things that you created for yourself that ended up being used by a lot of other people.
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, I started programming like before the internet, so I've been programming since I was, like 12 or something like that, 11. And yeah, when I first learned about the internet, it was very confusing and a little bit scary. But eventually I got used to it, and then eventually made this thing eDonkey, which is a file sharing network. And that was again this sense of improvement. I saw Napster, and Napster had a lot of like obvious flaws to anyone who programmed, and eDonkey was kind of an attempt to fix those and make it a much better system, make it useful for like lots of different kinds of files, and like hash the files so you knew that you got the exact file that you tried to download in the first place.
Well, so wait, walk me through that. Why was that important at the time, and what year was this?
This was 98, 99, somewhere in there. It was just obviously a very awesome idea that you could like download this stuff from like random people all over the internet rather than this like central place. And it was sort of again, like one of the appeals to me was it was sort of a leveling of the playing field and like opening up information to lots of different players where you wouldn't really have to necessarily be a publisher to get your, your stuff out there, your music or your movies or whatever out there in the world. You could just go get it. You could get it directly to people, right? And this is, I mean, the internet itself was fairly nascent back then. I mean, it was just starting to boom. Like it wasn't as widespread as it is now. Things like YouTube didn't exist, and so or Netflix or anything like that. Like Wikipedia didn't even exist then, I don't think.
Everything you've just mentioned, though, draws its roots from the peer-to-peer kind of file sharing days, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I had a very similar conversation with Bram from BitTorrent. And I want to get your feedback on this, because someone was like what you just talked about, you threw it out there, and for you it's like whatever, but someone like me, that's a big deal. You talked about hashing the file so you know what you downloaded. That was such a big deal, and it was so important, because what you just said and what was, I was a kid, and so I was using eDonkey, LimeWire, Napster, and learning the whole file sharing world. And I remember you'd get letters from your cable company saying we know what you're doing, but it would all go to our dads or whatever, because our dads were on our accounts. But a lot of those early things that were nascent, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, ended up being the roots of the things that we know today. Even Spotify and Bitcoin are all based off of some of those early technologies.
Yeah. I mean, it was that's to say, it was a big shift in the kind of the mindset of how the world could work. Basically, it was this big decentralization force, right? Which was super appealing to me, and it's kind of again a leveling of the playing field and kind of lowering these concentrations of power, which I think is ultimately always good for society when people can kind of go more to peer-to-peer. And so it was just a really cool system to work on, because unlike a static program that just runs in one place, it was much more like this organic beast where, you have this whole network that's kind of interacting and stuff. So it was a really cool problem. And it's interesting because a lot of you mentioned Bram, a lot of the people in file sharing have moved into the cryptocurrency world because it has some of the similar kind of feel and some of the similar appeal.
Bram gave me an interesting analogy, but I'm going to expand on it. So but essentially, if you look at how file sharing on credit cards really pushed forward the internet, all types of files, because it was information, right? Whether it was audio, video, ebooks, it was just information. Then for a while, it wasn't really a thing, it didn't matter much. What I mean by that is the Netflix, the Spotify, the Apple Music, all the technology, it took maybe another 10 or 20 years. It was kind of a gap. It didn't happen until the iPhone, the mid-2000s, that wasn't a thing. So the parallel is, John, is you look at the early days of Bitcoin, and you look at why were people using Bitcoin in the early days. And then you look at what is going on now is great and everything. But then you almost wonder well, those early ideas, those early people who were using Bitcoin for, great things, but also nefarious things, can we take the roots out of that, and that's how we'll use crypto down the road?
Yeah, I mean that's the hope. I mean, again, it's it's this way to kind of before something like Bitcoin, all money had to be centralized, right? There had to be either a government or something like PayPal that everything routed through, right? And the beauty of it, as probably everyone listening to your show knows, is that now you don't have to do that. You can go point to point. If I have Bitcoin, I can send it to you, and no one really has to know about it or can stop it or do anything about it. And this should enable all kinds of things. And yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the early ideas that people wanted to build and a lot of the excitement around it, we still haven't really seen a lot of that come to fruition yet, right? It takes.
People are putting it in waves. They're it's the wave of DeFi now and all these different things. I don't know if I agree with that, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely waves of hype and popularity of things. People through these phases of where everyone's talking about stable coins now, things like that. But I mean, in terms of what people are actually how they're going to use this stuff in the world, I mean, the actual use of any of these cryptocurrencies is beyond speculation. Is pretty low, and I think it just turns out it's very hard to build these networks, and it takes a long time, and we're getting there, but there's a lot of things that have to be in place before it actually becomes useful, becomes something like Spotify, but in crypto world, right? So, but I still do think that we'll get there. It just takes a lot of UI work. Right?
Well, I mean, you look at, it does take a lot of UI work, and we've come a long way. Just look at, like, dude, could you imagine a world, when you were registering Magic the Gathering online exchange website, do you imagine a world that now we'd have derivatives and future exchanges vying for market share in our industry? Like, it's the big boys now for exchanges.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's kind of amazing. The whole thing was amazing to watch, like go from, just this really nascent group of like 2,000 people on Bitcoin Talk to what it is now.
Has anyone run the numbers? I would love to see the stats of like the Bitcoin Talk active user accounts during those years.
I mean, I kind of looked at, I looked at it a few years ago just to kind of see, how big it was when I signed up, things like that. It was basically before that. I learned about Bitcoin through this Slashdot article. Before that, I think there was like 200 people on Bitcoin Talk. After
you and Garzik.
There was like 2,000. So, and then there was like, and then it kind of just grew from there. But yeah, probably somebody's graphed it. It's pretty interesting.
I'm looking now. There's got to be a way to look at the full stats and analysis. Here you go. Okay, boom. You ready? The grand total in 2011 was less than 10,000 active accounts. 10,000 accounts.
Yeah. And that was probably the end of 2011. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, from middle of 2011, it was less than 5,000.
Right.
So I was that first 5,000 wave, early 2011. Wow, I never put a number on it.
Yeah.
Now, 2018.
Yeah, especially back then, like anybody who knew about Bitcoin probably had an account on that forum. So.
Oh, cool! This is so cool. So in 2011, how many legendary users? I became a legendary user in 2012.
What's a legendary user? You just posted?
I don't know. It was just it was stupid. So the early forums was so dumb because, not dumb. It was very like we kind of like we were all adults and then we all like jumped into this forum thing and we're like just like bickering and fighting and.
Yeah, it's a way to be a child.
Yeah, but it was still a lot of fun. I wanna talk to you because there aren't a lot of people who maybe share the same philosophy as me. So I have this kind of philosophy that I push on all my guests, and I don't know if some people agree, some disagree, and you could probably assume who agrees and who disagrees. So I believe that, and this is kind of like how morally and ethically and through my capitalistic needs and wants approach this industry, is that every project, every coin, every token exists on a spectrum of decentralization. A lot of projects choose where they want to be on that spectrum. A lot of projects say, we're going to, for example, Tezos or whatever can say, I want to, give up consensus for better immutability, or I want to, like it's a lever system. So I see everything as like experimentation. I mean, how do you feel, before I get into it, like, how do you feel about that from an outset? Like just...
Yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously decentralization is a spectrum and you can be more or less decentralized. It's not a binary thing, and there's always trade-offs for these different aspects of it. So.
Where do you, your perfect cryptocurrency, in your philosophy, where does that fall on that spectrum? Did my lights just turn off? They did. I guess no one knows I'm here. I ask because I like to learn. So I'm asking, like, is your personal philosophy that all cryptocurrencies need to be like Bitcoin on a full decentralization and no governance is the best governance? Or are you more, like you're one of the founders of Ripple and that's a whole different, a completely opposite end of the spectrum. Does that change for you, or you still believe? Oh, the lights just turned back on. Do you still believe all? Where do you fall now?
So I think, I mean, it's a little complicated. I mean, I think you want the protocol to be as decentralized as possible, and the more decentralized it is, the better. But it also has to work, and it also has to be able to make progress, and it has to be able to be efficient. So there are certain trade-offs where being like even Bitcoin is not as perfectly decentralized as it could be. Like that, you could imagine a world where it's even more decentralized than Bitcoin is, right? But the protocol at the end of the day has to work. You have to have a way of like coming to consensus, and that's they use mining, right? And so that has certain trade-offs for other things that you could possibly use. So in terms of governance, I mean, I think the weird thing is ultimately all of them or all the ones that are open source at least, are forkable, right? So the governance is never like absolute, right? You could always just say like,
yeah, good point.
You could always just be like, okay, we don't really like the way this is going. Like this cable of people that decided to take it one direction, we're just going to do a different thing.
Yeah, but there is like a mass market effect, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's hard to do in practice, and you need a lot of momentum. I mean, but we've seen it happen in other things, right? So
yeah,
not possible.
Well, it's actually a good thing in a way because it prevents, it allows people to work together on creating a solution for the common goal instead of just forking off.
Right.
And until you get to a point where it's like you simply can't agree. We saw Bitcoin Cash, right. Bitcoin. Listen, the Bitcoin Cash, BSV, Bitcoin will be, if anything, something that is studied in history books of social interaction. What does it mean to fork off, right?
Yeah.
Fork off.
Fork off, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is kind of a wild experiment. It's like, I don't know. It's sort of the same dynamics that have been playing out on the internet, just like socially for a long time, but it's made in this weird monetary realm. It's pretty bizarre. So
I try to look at I try to look at common denominators and parallels in the different projects that you're involved in. And so what I've noticed is that with Ripple, it seemed like, just from talking to you in those days, I remember Arthur, and I miss Arthur, and I talk about Arthur. Actually, I messaged him the other day, like a month or two ago. I remember when I had first understood Ripple, and you first explained it to me, I understood it as this, is a way for people to extend social credit to each other. So it seemed like, and that was like how I first kind of got it. When Chris came in, he was able to expand on it. So that focuses on like the person. Is Stellar more focused on corporations and companies and banks and working together at a protocol level, and you think Ripple is more like person to person?
Well, I think Ripple is actually more focused on replacing like Swift essentially, but Stellar it's basically the main thing is interoperability, right? Like I think the fact that you could do the social credit on Stellar, but I think it's hard to do in practice because it's really changing the behavior of people. So I think maybe that'll come down the line. But the first thing that I think it's very useful for is just this interoperability story where it's like you have. Right now, the way payments work in the world, it's very much pre-internet. Like none of these systems talk to each other. Like ACH doesn't talk to M-Pesa, the mobile money thing in Kenya, things like that, right? But Stellar gives them a way to do this, where they can basically, it doesn't matter what financial institution you're using or what kind of currency you're using. All these things just can interoperate seamlessly, right? And that's kind of the beauty of it.
But that's like the last. That's like step 20. If I was talking to you, I'd say, Jed, you're like going from step 1 or step 2 to step 20, because what you just described and what your goal for Stellar is literally like almost for me the end all be all of financial products, is a way for anyone to have a financial product anywhere in the world and to plug into the global financial product ecosystem. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is step 20 to get everyone on board, but it's not. It is actually very near term, and it's already happening on the network where it's in these like local areas, like now people can send money back and forth between Europe and Nigeria because there's a company in Nigeria that's on Stellar and there's a company in Europe that's on Stellar. And so these companies are interoperable. And any other company that joins just becomes part of this network, right? And so it is nascent, but it is still useful like today, right?
Yeah. Do you think there'll be ever another industry that you could ever work in that would motivate you as much as crypto?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Really? Like what?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's AI, there's like space stuff. I've been talking about mining asteroids for about 20 years now.
Well, part of your philanthropic work is to the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. What's that about?
So they're a AI safety group. So if anyone that like looks
like governs robots to make sure they don't kill us all.
Sort of. I mean, basically, like
because thank you for that, because that's what we need.
Yeah. Well, I figured I was one of the few people that would fund it, so I should probably do it. So because it is important,
What do you think?
Basically, it's like if AI is developed and it's not developed in a proper way where its interests are aligned with humanity's, then it could go very, very wrong, right? And so Miri is kind of a way to they're thinking about that problem and like how to make sure when we ultimately build AI that it cares about the things that we care about, so it won't just destroy us all either on purpose or inadvertently. So,
it's interesting from a business side of things too. I started consulting for companies in 2016, 2017 when I had gotten out, and something novel happened, which was very interesting because during those years, as you were growing Stellar, a lot of these companies were starting to like decide, and these projects they were starting to launch on a different blockchain, and Stellar was the only one that actually had a way of companies to like talk to you guys and interface and everything. At the time, no one else was doing that. I don't even think Ethereum Foundation was a thing. It was no other project was doing that. Why was that an important philosophy for you?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to like the original reason that we built Stellar. I mean, we wanted to build it to be used by actual people. Like it wasn't just a crypto project. It wasn't just supposed to be like, oh, here's some cool technology that we hope people like. It wasn't really focused at crypto people. I mean, I think it ended up being a mistake not to like focus so much on the crypto world originally, but yeah. So our original goal was like, how do we make a software tool that's useful for businesses in the world? And you have to talk to them. You have to like go and explain it to them and get them to use it.
So for those who don't know, let's get into Stellar and get into. I want to focus a little bit on how your governance works, and I want to talk about the different checks and balances that you guys have in place to prevent various entities in the ecosystem to try to have more power than another.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess Stellar's consensus model is very different than Bitcoin's. It doesn't have mining, so it has what we call validators, and there's like a series of validators out there in the world. Anyone can spin up a validator, and validators choose other validators in the world that they listen to, and you can show that if these validator sets overlap to a certain degree, then the whole network will converge. And what this means is the validators kind of control the direction of the network. So like, for instance, we're putting out a new SDF, Stellar Development Foundation is putting out a new protocol version, and we release it to the world, but the validators are the ones that are going to actually have to like agree to accept it and make the protocol move on to the next one. So essentially the model is there's a mailing list where people propose changes to the code. SDF is usually the one that implements them, and then the rest of the world kind of votes on whether they want that. There's like a long feedback process for like what should actually how the core protocol should change. So that's kind of the way the governance works now. So,
have you had any times in practice where things got stress testing the network?
Where the network itself got stressed?
Not just the network on an engineering side, but also like on a socioeconomic side.
Not really. I mean, we've had a lot of debate internally about like this feature or that feature, but there hasn't been anything like the block size debate in Bitcoin where the community is like largely split one side or another. I mean, there's been, we kind of have this dynamic fee mechanism inside the protocol, and that has had to change like once, and it probably needs to change again. And there's some debate around that, but usually people can kind of see there's not that much disagreement. Like people know it needs to be raised. It's just a matter of like where does it actually ultimately land. So it's been pretty smooth sailing so far. But
the block size debate is an interesting one that you brought up because it wasn't political. It was political. It was very political. But originally, it wasn't meant to be political. It was supposed to be a technical problem, and let's come up with a technical solution. Right. And it came up to like a lot of people not thinking that it even is a problem, and it's diplomacy. But anyways, what's your take on all that? Not to bring anything up, even though I had a few people on the show and we talked about it, but I guess more of scaling, because what's interesting is the block size debate is it's still a debate. It's still going on in terms of we don't know, we think we know, in the long term what will have proven to be a better scaling solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think like ultimately one of the issues there was, I mean, I wasn't following it super closely, but ultimately one of the issues seemed to be that these people just had different ideas of how they wanted the network to be. Like they had different conceptions of what Bitcoin should be used for and like how people should interact with it. And both of them were probably legitimate. It's just, they just had different ideas for what they wanted the network to be. I mean, people kind of lump all these cryptocurrencies into one big bucket, but really they're solving very different problems, right? And so I think one group of the Bitcoin people wanted to solve one problem and one group wanted to solve another, and that led to this kind of schism.
But is that our fault? Because we're calling everything cryptocurrencies and digital assets, and you're right, it confuses people because everyone's like, yeah, I want to get Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, but it's not the same, and sometimes things shouldn't even be called cryptocurrencies.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. It's definitely confusing, and yeah, maybe there should be other terms. I mean, like kind of there's some like common underlying like theme or like technological like thing about them, but above that, I mean, again, they're just like solving very different things, and they really shouldn't be compared to each other. So
it's very interesting how that kind of all works out. What are you doing now? You know, hobby, free time. What makes you happy?
Yeah, so I still spend a ton of time at Stellar. You know, I surf when I can.
Not Stellar related.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I've been thinking about AI stuff a little bit.
Yeah. How's it been during lockdown over there? Are you able to go outside now and walk around parks and things like that?
Yeah, it's been, you know, for me personally, it's been fine. You know, I get to wear pants less, which is awesome. And, you know, hang out with the kids more. It's been good. So, yeah. But I mean, you know, it's kind of, you know, I'm scared of what the repercussions of this thing will be over the next like few years, because it has devastated a lot of people's lives. So,
yeah. No, it really did. And how do you think the economy will turn out? A lot of people are looking at like stock market's great, you know, world's opening back up, but really the effects of unemployment aren't really going to be seen for many, many months to come.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little worried about it. I mean, you know, hopefully we'll recover, but it seems like it was a pretty big shock, and still is, right? I mean, things are still unopened here in California. So.
I met a restaurant owner last night here in Florida. I went to get some Mexican food, and I was talking to the owner, and he was excited because the day he was allowed to reopen is the day he got his PPP loan. So he was able to he's like, I have to spend this money.
Right.
So he's like, you know, hiring all the people back and doing all these things. So maybe the PPP idea could have ended up being a good thing. But, you know, I think when it comes to economics, I think it all comes down to balance. And I really want to hear your opinion on this. If there was a system of checks and balances, you know, with the Federal Reserve and a balance, is there a place for like a printing money PPP style situation that the government came in and did? Is there a place for that, for actually like, you know, emergency printing of money in a system, in an ecosystem? Like, for example, let's just say a cryptocurrency launched and built in a mechanism to emergency print more if something were to happen. I know, it's kind of weird. I never thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist. It's like I don't really want
to
too much, but I mean, I think in terms of like, it's just very different from a central government printing money to like some cryptocurrency printing money. I mean, there's some reasons for central government to print money. Like, there's like a lot of economists, I mean, the majority of them think it's like a very reasonable thing for governments to do. Whereas, like, if only, you know, 1 million people are using your currency, there's no real reason to print it. Like, there's no macroeconomic stuff going on that is an excuse for that.
That's a good point. It's like, yeah, no one's using this. Just print more of it to make more.
Yeah. So I would be pretty skeptical of it on the cryptocurrency scale. But.
Are you in touch with a lot of the people that were involved in some of the early projects like Ripple and everything?
I mean, I don't talk to the Ripple folks really, but I mean, every once in a while I'll run into some of the
I mean, like Arthur, David, you know, guys like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I see, like, I run into like early Bitcoin people occasionally, and that's always cool. You know,
yeah.
It's awesome that most of them are still in the space and most of them are still doing stuff.
Why do you think that is? You know, myself, I don't know why. I guess because I don't think I could do anything else.
That's all you know. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think most of the people that got in early got in for sort of ideological reasons, and they're just it captures their imagination, and none of that has changed, right? It still seems like it's this really powerful thing that can really affect the world for the good, and so that's hard to walk away from, especially when it's, it's still going and it's still not done. So
yeah, the ideology is definitely motivating. It's definitely a motivating factor here, and I think about it all the time. It's nice to be, I want to expand on this a little bit. It's nice to be part of an industry that almost comes with like a moral fluffy feeling. It's like you're in an industry that that whatever you're doing will end up, not to sound cliche, but like make the world a better place. So
yeah,
very few other industries have that.
It's true for all of cryptocurrency. I mean, there's definitely a lot of
bullshit and things.
Make the world a better place. There's a lot of money grabbing going on, but yeah.
That does happen in waves, though. That really does happen in waves.
Yeah.
And you see during the bear market that we just went through, or that we're still going, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe any price up to $20,000 will prove to be bear market down the road.
Yeah.
But so you transitioned from CTO of Stellar into chief architect. What's the difference in that role?
Well, it's less like no one reports to me anymore, so I don't have to do any management, which I don't really enjoy.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah. I wanted to focus more on just kind of like the strategy and like the protocol side of things. So that's a lot for that reason. So yeah.
And so what are you like? Are you more visionary now, working on on the project?
Yeah, visionary.
Just like the best term. You can come in and leave whenever you want in shorts, and he's a visionary. It's like that's what I call myself for one of my companies, Crypto IQ. I say I'm the chief visionary officer after Silicon Valley because it's the best role idea.
Right. Yeah. That's perfect. So I don't know. It's kind of a host of things. I mean, it's kind of like a grab bag of stuff. It's never really the same thing. So what I do.
Yeah. And tell us like what's been going on, with the protocol and this is somewhat of a timeless episode. I could release it next week or in 6 years from now. So I hope. But but seriously, what are you excited about, in 2020 on the protocol? What are some kind of goals that you set for yourself that you want to achieve in this year?
So, I mean, the biggest thing that we're working on is kind of above the protocol. It's this consumer wallet for people to actually use Stellar, which I'm pretty excited about. It's essentially, you can kind of think of it like a global Venmo, where it's allows you to do cross-border payments, save money in dollars in places where they have really high inflation, things like that. So it should be really useful for people, and it's got a really awesome UI and it doesn't really expose the fact that you're using crypto, which I think is cool. So like, your grandma or whatever should be able to use it. Anyone who can use Venmo should be able to use this thing.
And will it like connect with local companies, like M-Pesa or whatever?
That's the idea. Like it's because it leverages Stellar's interoperability. Like any financial institution can kind of get on and they can interoperate with the users of this wallet. And we use, financial institutions kind of all over the world to be the fiat on and off for this thing. So if you're in Argentina and you want to load up Argentine pesos, you go through a partner there that does it, right? So, and this can allow the thing to kind of grow organically and be useful all over the planet. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's not really a change to the protocol, but it's like making this thing actually useful for people. And I think we really need to see that in the crypto space in general. And so I'm pretty excited about that thing. And then
you're talking about,
okay.
I was saying, you're talking about building out like UIs on top of the protocol level and building it out like that. Or we talk about like multiple layers now, or is it all on that layer?
So everyone has an individual account. It's non-custodial, so it's not like a layer 2 thing.
Yeah.
But it's just the UI itself just kind of obscures the fact that this is a decentralized system. Like for the user, they can interact with it just like they're used to interacting with any app, which I think is cool. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to be able to interact with an app that acts on the protocol level, non-custodial. That's kind of where I was getting at. Because there is a difference in philosophy now, but and I just realized too, there's so many differences in philosophies. Like we go back to why people were using Bitcoin in the early days, and a lot of people like don't recognize or talk about that anymore. And then a lot of different coins and projects are either saying like the Monero route, full anonymity, and then you have Zcash that offers partial, and then you have like Dash, and I want to hear what you think about this. But then there are other companies. Then you have like Bitcoin that says like, no, we want to build all these different things on top of it. So you have like Shift network that's on top of Bitcoin. You have all these different networks. Should the protocols be these completely free entity, these free ecosystems, and that you have to be, the toll booths in and out are the ones that are responsible for regulations? Or do you think it should be like on the protocol level itself?
I think as like free and permissionless you can make the core protocol, the better. There's lots of different jurisdictions in the world and lots of different rules. And if you start to try to cram all those into the protocol, it's just going to break and not be very useful for anyone. So, I hope that these things end up getting regulated kind of at the points where money goes in and out. And that makes the most sense and is the best for users and the best for society, really. So yeah, that's definitely the way we lean towards things. On the privacy side, I think privacy is super important. It's one of the things, like Bitcoin has the same privacy model or Stellar has the same privacy model as Bitcoin, where it's, it's like kind of pseudo-anonymous or whatever. But I think it's important to go further than that because, that still allows people to see all the, like, you can like kind of disentangle who's who at some point, right? And for this to actually be really good for people and not turn into like some tool of like mass surveillance, like it needs to be more private than what it is currently. We're working to get there. So
I know we're going to get a little bit, I have a question and it's going to be a little bit more complicated than I'm used to doing on this show. But when we're talking about Bitcoin, and the way with Bitcoin is really just, there's no Bitcoin per se. It's just unspent outputs, there's fungibility because there's no unit there. It's hard to like, add blacklists because you can't really blacklist like unspent outputs or inputs or whatever. Is that the best model to go down? How do you view this? Like, is there fungibility in Stellar? How do you view this?
Yeah, there's the same kind of level of fungibility in Stellar as there is in Bitcoin. You can, like people can trace things and like, these are the coins that came from here. Let's block that account or whatever. But they can do that in Bitcoin also. But I think. Again, like I think like the more free the core system is, the better, and you can kind of regulate it on the outskirts, which that's important, but it shouldn't be done in like the core system.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Actually, very much agree with you on this. And what we're talking about now, like being a visionary or a leader, in that respect. I don't know if you made like a conscious or subconscious decision, but there's probably a group of maybe less than a dozen people who have been involved in the founding of different projects that have been very successful. And I mentioned some of those people earlier. Some of those people took differences of approaches in like the key man issue, right? So Satoshi had left. Then you have the founders of some of these other coins and tokens. Some of them are very like, I'm the leader on Twitter, 1 million followers. I'm not saying one is better than the other. And that has a benefit because when you have a leader, it's, there's like a symbolic leader, of course, symbolically, because no one has a leader. It's all symbolic. It's easier for direction to follow a symbolic leader. That's that argument. On the other side, having a leader, we don't even need to make the case. A symbolic leader is just someone for them to arrest, at the end of the day. And so you've not gone the approach of any of those. You just said, I'm going to work and I'm going to be I'm going to do whatever I want to do and I live my life, right? And that's the kind of the approach that I like. Did you do that consciously or subconsciously? Because like you're not on Twitter much, you don't really talk to media and press.
I guess it's just sort of the way I do things. I guess I don't know. Like I'm not like. I just don't. I don't want to be on Twitter. There's just nothing.
Some people
really
thrive off of that.
Yeah,
that's why they started these projects or whatever. Not specifically, but
I guess I skew way more towards like doing things than talking about things. Like I don't really like to talk about the thing. I would rather just do the thing. So that just kind of shakes out that way. That like, people do think about when they think about Stellar, they often think about me, which I think is unfortunate. I wish there was like a wider base there. I wish I could kind of disappear like Satoshi.
Yeah.
But
you could be like Jameson. Disappear.
I guess, but
Do you have any like moments in your life that are unexplained? You just can't explain? Yeah, just like things that happen to you.
Like, what do you mean? Like,
well, I don't know. I like asking this question every so often because only for the guests that I feel like could have good answers. But sometimes people have these like moments from childhood that, like for example, Catherine Coley, she said how when she was 6 months old, someone threw her into the deep end of a pool, and she swam like at 6 months, and like she can never explain that, and that is something that has guided her whole life.
Right.
You don't have to answer. Actually, when I had asked her, we actually paused for like 30 minutes to talk about something else, and then she came back to it. Okay. So I don't think you have to answer it now, but it's like you think about it. It's
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, you know, here we are. It's we're getting into the summer seasons. It's crypto spring or crypto summer or whatever. What do you think the overall mood is on people right now in our space?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I have a great pulse on it, but it seems like things are upbeat. Like things like, the happening just happened, and so like, I mean,
were you following the happening? How did you think it would go out? It would play out same way it did?
Yeah, I wasn't really following it. Yeah, I mean, the one before people could meet in person, so there was like a party and stuff, so that was more fun. This is like, I don't know, what can you really do other than check online? So. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it seems like a lot of like kind of the nonsense has shook out a little bit. I think people are still are making progress on things, and it seems like cautiously optimistic to me. So how I would say the mood is.
Yeah,
but I don't know that I have the greatest pulse. But.
So not internally in Bitcoin, but you're interfacing with some of these large corporations like IBM and whatever. What do they think crypto is? Do they think, I'm not generalizing here, but what do they think crypto is all about? Do they think it's still money? Or are they looking at more blockchain-y? Trying to get an insight into like what's going to be the buzzwords of 2020, 2021.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the ones that we talk to like it because for the monetary aspect, right? They like it for payments. Anyone who wants to just use it for blockchain, like we don't spend time with because it doesn't really make sense. So
like Long Island iced tea.
Yeah.
Well, what's the perfect type of company that you would love to approach you guys? And because this show has a lot of listeners.
So I mean, for us, I think the sweet spot for us is not these like really large enterprises. They just move too slow and it's too cumbersome. And not the smallest players, but someone that's like technically capable and is wants to send money cross border and like kind of wants to connect with other things out there in the world, like someone like Venmo wanted to like make their thing global, then like Stellar is like a perfect solution for them, right? So like, so these kind of like mid-sized fintech.
Well, so explain how a company like Venmo could interface with Stellar to connect to like the Venmo of Bangladesh, for example.
How would it work? So
like that's what interoperability, right? If there's like if Venmo wants to interface with M-Pesa, how would that connection happen?
Yeah, so I mean, Stellar really at the end of the day, sure, it's a cryptocurrency and a blockchain, but really it's a payment standard. And so it's just like if they adopt this payment standard, then anyone else who adopts this payment standard can now send money back and forth with each other, right? So it's a simple thing to do, and
What are some things that are not standardized of a payment? Like what do these companies kind of do differently?
Oh, well, there is no standard, right? So it's like pre-internet, right? There's all these different little networks, and they all have their own protocol that works within each other.
Different databases and shit.
Yeah, most of them don't even have an external-facing API, and like even if they did, like it's unique to them, right? It's like the way you have to like adopt PayPal's API, right? So and it doesn't really handle it only handles the case of sending in and out of PayPal. It's just nothing is really designed for this thing where it's like, how do we connect all these different networks together, right? And that's what Stellar's trying to do.
No one really like thought about doing that, though. That was never something like global finance, I don't think, became a big deal until after 2009.
Right. Well, one thing, it wasn't really possible until like this blockchain idea.
Yeah, it's true.
Because before you needed some central person, and there's no central person that everyone would trust to route all the payments through.
Interesting. Is that something that you think down the road will be attributed to crypto? Is that no one even thought like frictionless global payments could even be possible until crypto came out? If anything, it showed people that it was possible. you know?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's clear that the world is going to move this way.
We did something good in life.
This is how it happens, right? This is the enabling technology. This is why it didn't happen. This is why the internet happened for information, years or decades before. It's happening now for money, right? Because you don't have this double spin problem with information, but you have it for money, right?
Yeah. I was just looking at this in my camera. I use this as one of the first banks that I got kicked out of. I keep all the swag from all the banks. I think I have all the letters they even sent me too. But do you have any old habits or old like swagger things like that from the early Bitcoin days? I have old BitInstant shirts too.
Oh, really? I have one of those like physical Bitcoin coins.
Yeah.
I got when I think Bitcoin was like $1, and I had my kids playing with it. And at some point, I was like, "Wait, this is like $10,000."
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth a lot more. You shouldn't do that. But listen, Jed, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, man.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, it's great talking to you.
You too.